Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Back in 2014, I think it was, there was a ballot question that was put before the people of Connecticut that asked them if they were okay with expanding voting to include voting that was not in person for every voter, and they voted that down, which is telling. And in 2022, this body, this committee, in fact, most of the same people, and this legislature also put a new question to the voters after debating whether or not that was a prudent idea in this committee. And that question was, shall the Constitution of the state be amended to permit the General Assembly to allow each elector to vote by absentee ballot? I said at the time, and I still think it's interesting, that they changed the question on purpose because they wanted a different answer, and making it less obvious that we are expanding not in-person voting, I think, is how they ultimately ended up getting a affirmative result. I'd also point out that when the question was asked, it was already the law. Shall the Constitution of the state be amended to permit the General Assembly to allow each elector to vote by absentee ballot? What for? Every voter was allowed to vote by absentee ballot, even at that time, assuming they were in correlation to the requirements that are in our state constitution. And as a matter of fact, that was long after 2020, when the Secretary of the State and the governor of the state of Connecticut during the pandemic decided to redefine one of the words in our Constitution and our statute, sickness, to allow them to send ballot applications to every voter across the state of Connecticut, effectively creating no excuse absentee voting for all at that time. When I complained about it, the legislature actually came back and redefined the word sickness in the legislative statute as a way to justify what they had already done. So we already have no excuse absentee voting because there is a Supreme Court case in Connecticut. There is a statute that redefines sickness, and effectively it says now that, unlike it used to be, which was if you had sickness as an individual, you could be excused from in-person voting and vote by absentee. It's now defined as just sickness. In other words, your sickness, someone else's sickness. Sickness existed once in the past. It may exist again in the future. Someone else may be sick somewhere, someday, sometime, somehow. But sickness itself as a word is justification. So everyone already has no excuse absentee voting in Connecticut. So this is in somewhat of an unnecessary process. I think what's really more interesting about it is that when the voters were asked that question on November 8th of 2022, shall the Constitution of the state be amended to permit the General Assembly to allow each elector to vote by absentee ballot? I think what they should have put on the ballot was, shall the Constitution be amended to permit the General Assembly to create an 83-page omnibus bill to completely change our absentee ballot voting process while failing to provide input to the minority party representatives or proper time to review such aforementioned bill and debate it, and fail to provide for any necessary protections to maintain voter integrity. I think that if that question was on the ballot, people would have answered differently. But that's what we have today. We have an 83-page bill to implement what already existed in practice, if not in the letter of the law. I think it's very interesting. Like some of my colleagues have already mentioned, I've never been against no excuse absentee voting. I've said over and over again that I think people should be allowed every possible mechanism to vote, and it should be as easy as possible. However, I've also said, every time I said that, the problem is that the majority party in this state wants to do the access part, but they never want to do the part that goes with it to make sure that it's a legitimate process that results in proper election integrity. And every time we've debated this, including ever since 2014, if I remember correctly, the minority party, whether it was me or someone else, has offered numerous amendments to bring us in line with other states that have similar policies. It is always pointed out by the majority. Lots of states have mail-in voting. Yes, they do. And those states that have mail-in voting also have laws that secure the election process. They have voter ID, they have photo identification, they have signature verification throughout the process where they identify the voter at the time they register and they can track them through the entire process. They make sure that their mail-in voting systems work. Not Connecticut. All you got to do is turn on the evening news and catch Wanda from Bridgeport to know that our system doesn't have any of these protections. Nationally, the Republicans in Congress are trying to pass the Save America Act, which is really nothing more than photo identification requirements for voting. But even though people in both parties, independent voters, overwhelmingly support photo identification, it's something like 80 to 90% of voters think it's a good idea, and that includes the people that are supposedly the victims of some terrible Republican voter suppression scheme, the minority voters that live in urban areas. They're for it too. And they're for it for the same reason, which is that everybody values their vote. And your vote only matters if it actually matters. And if there are people that are able to vote that shouldn't be able to vote, or to vote multiple times, or for cheating to exist, or for Wanda to stuff a drop box in Bridgeport, as long as that's going on, everyone else is having their vote diminished. The value of their vote means less. Worse than that, people do not trust our system. I don't trust our system. I think that the people that work in our local elections are fabulous human beings. They work hard. I know a lot of them in the towns that I represent. They put in long hours. They take it so unbelievably seriously that what they're doing is important, that they have to screen for accuracy at every turn. The problem is that they're operating within a system that doesn't have the right protections. Most of the things that could cause a fraudulent vote to occur happen outside their control. They happen in the sense that absentee voting opens the door for things to occur that doesn't happen with in-person voting. And don't take my word for it. I mean, first off, it is obvious that in-person voting is always going to be more secure than mail-in voting. If the person's standing in front of you voting, chances are they're a legitimate voter. At least you know they're a legitimate human being, right? A debate I had in the Senate a number of years ago, I remember Senator Martin Looney, the most powerful member of the majority party in the legislature to this day. He got up and made comments on the floor, and I will share them at some future point when we debate this bill again, as I have in the past, where he made it very, very abundantly clear that sometimes you just never know who's actually casting an absentee vote. And he said that in defense of expanding early voting, of course. But he still said it. And he said it because it's true. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it. It's just that the people that came before us, frankly, I think they were smarter. They came before us, and they were very, very concerned about making sure that our votes count and that there's no funny business going on. So they said, you know what? We're going to require in-person voting for almost everybody, but we will make the necessary exceptions for people in the military, people that are sick, people that are out of town. It's actually somewhat expansive already. It is only because there is an electoral advantage perceived by certain members of the political establishment that we want to expand expand absentee voting to be no excuse absentee voting. But as I said, I'm okay with it as long as you put in the protections. Because like everyone else, I want people to participate in our election process. I want people to participate in politics. I want people to show up at our town meetings. I want people to come here to our public hearings. I want people to testify. I want them to tell us what they think. Our system only works when the public is informed and they're involved in our decision making. And I'm afraid the question that was put on the ballot in 2022 purposely misled the people. And we may have not got the result that they would have chosen if they had known everything that was happening today. And if every member of the voting public in 2022 that voted on that fateful constitutional amendment was privy to this conversation we are having right now here today, I can promise you that result would not have come out the same way. I looked at the underlying bill, and like Representative Carpino, I wouldn't say I was leaning towards voting for it because it still omits the most significant provisions that I think belong in such a proposal, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But at least it was a kind of a clean bill that succeeded in implementing the expansion that is implied in the constitutional question, even though the constitutional question, as I said, doesn't actually do that. All it did was restate what the current law was. When you ask somebody, should we make it illegal to run stop signs as a constitutional question, then people say yes. No surprise, that was the law. People were eligible to vote by absentee ballot, and they are now. And this bill doesn't really change any of that, except for the fact that it allows an open door to expand into so many other different areas, to create so many other schemes and mechanisms that will result in a massive expansion in the way people are able to vote in the state. There's talk of, and on the same agenda, by the way, I think those points were very, very well made by my colleagues, that we have an agenda with 52 items on it, and a lot of them are election related. Some of them are in direct contradiction to the policy that is in the bill before us. So I'm like, which one is going to supersede when they both pass? What's going to happen? Some things expand upon things that happen in other sections. It's really kind of a mess. It's a smorgasbord, not even really a buffet. What I would like to do is highlight what is missing. And that is the election integrity pieces that belong in our laws and have belonged there for a great many years. I've been offering these amendments time in and time again, and I've always been frustrated by the fact that they fail on party lines. One thing I point out almost every time we have a debate on significant election legislation is that this is one area where we ought to find agreement before we proceed. I mean, we can debate anything. We can argue over policy on almost any topic that there is in this building, and legitimately so. And there are elections that have consequences and put certain people in office and certain majorities in power for periods of time, and that's all well and good. But elections are a little bit different. Elections are the rules of the game. That is the game that we all have to agree to. It's like you can't have one party, and I used this example just recently, but you can't have one party in power to say, well, I know we were playing normal baseball before, but we're going to change the rules now so that this team gets to have 6 outs per inning and the other team still has 3 outs. That's kind of messing with the game. That's changing the basic element of fairness that I think is required. And if we cannot agree on the process by which people are elected, and if the minority party feels like the majority party is using their majority to change the rules about something as basic about that, about where we're going to determine who is actually elected, that is not what should happen in a republic. Frankly, I would caution the majority party in that sense to say that is really not a road to go down. History tells us that when we have political factions, if you read in the Federalist Papers, you understand all about different factions and why they exist and how they intermingle. One of the most important things you need to remember is that you got to respect the factions in a republic. If you don't respect the factions, you get rebellion. You get other toxic things to occur. And I'm not trying to invoke a rebellion today. I'm just suggesting that putting bills on agendas with substitute language at the last minute, doing things far out of bounds of what is expected, telling the voters you're going to implement something that's already the law, and then coming up with a 80-something page bill with hundreds of dozens of sections. that do lots of other things beyond what was suggested. This creates a sense that the majority is overreaching. And without going too far down that road, I'll just suggest that there's been a lot of things that have happened in this legislative session that I think indicate that one-party rule is problematic at times. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to offer a couple of amendments to see if we can improve this bill. And I want to just remind you of something. Every time that we have debated no excuse absentee voting in the past, in this chamber and on the floor of the Senate, every time I have offered these amendments, and every time the response I've gotten from the two chairs of this committee is, not now, Senator, not now. We're doing the constitutional amendment. When we actually pass that and we do the policy, you will be included in the process. You'll get to be a part of how we make the law for actual no excuse vote, absentee voting. Well, I'm here to tell you, no one's come to me. This committee doesn't even screen bills with the ranking members. We find out what's on the agenda at 5:55 p.m. at the statutory deadline, and then we get language after that fact that is something different. And while I opened by saying that I do appreciate the chairs and they're very nice people and they're very accommodating, they still take every advantage. And there's no reason for that. In this legislature, the GAE committee is going to pass 4 or 5 bills, probably at best this session. But yet, we have 50-something bills on this agenda. There's still a meeting potentially for Monday. We've already passed a number of bills already. What's it all for? Is it to waste our time? Is it to distract people? Is it to show certain people out in the world, look, we're trying? So here is our chance. Here is our chance. I want to be involved. I want to make sure that I have the chance to offer my ideas to be part of this package so that the people that I represent, 100-something thousand people back in the 16th district, 5 glorious towns, Wolcott, Prospect, Southington, Cheshire, and Waterbury. Those people that live there, they have their voice heard. That's what I'm doing here. I have a lot of colleagues that serve in districts as Republicans, and they would like their voices heard too, and I know they agree with me on some of these things. So is the majority prepared to say, well, because we control most of the things, and maybe we have a slim majority of individuals across Connecticut that agree with us, we will discount the views of everybody else. That's the choice that is on the table today, ladies and gentlemen. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the amendments have been handed out already. They have. I would like to start by making a motion to approve amendment item number 7, which I will describe very briefly. And it's basically an amendment that would say that there shall be no more unsolicited distribution of unsolicited absentee ballot applications.
Second.
Thank you. And when the vote is taken, I would like it to take it by roll, but I want to just finish what I was saying about what this is for. People listening, if you're not understanding what this amendment is about, let me just describe it very briefly. One of the problems with having absentee ballot voting is not that people are given the opportunity to vote without an excuse by absentee. That is perfectly fine. I think that's great. However, what it does is it opens a door. It opens a door to have people working on their own behalf, on behalf of candidates, on different political parties, to try and engage you in getting your ballot application in front of you, signed and returned, and ultimately a ballot signed and returned. This opens another door, which is for people that work in mysterious ways, like in the city of Bridgeport, to come up with maybe some ballots and ballot applications that are not so legitimate. It also opens the door for chaos, as we saw in 2020 during the pandemic, when the Secretary of State mailed absentee ballot applications to everyone on our state voter rolls. And I don't remember the exact number. I used to know the exact number. It was a crazy number, though. It was like in the tens of thousands, might be in the hundreds of thousands of actual ballot applications that were returned in the mail. Not only does that cost a lot of taxpayer money to mail those all out, but think about how many were returned in the mail, indicating that the voter rolls were so way out of whack that they were just sending out absentee ballot applications to people who had moved, who had died, duplicates, you name it. And I had so many people contacting me saying that they were receiving ballot applications to their mailbox that didn't belong to them. They had lived in their homes for 15 or 20 years, and yet they're still getting ballot applications addressed to mysterious names of people that don't live there. This happened. It's well documented. I still have the stacks of envelopes that people handed to me. Nothing has been done about that. Every year, the Secretary of State is got an opportunity to address our voter rolls. It's in statute already, but it exists as a may. That's something that ought to be addressed. And I believe that our voter rolls are still extremely out of whack. And what this does open the door to is our state government or municipal governments going out of their way to mail ballot applications to every person on the voter rolls. And that means a lot of people who are not legitimate voters are going to receive these. And I will just say a quick aside without becoming a conspiracy theorist, which is that in 2020, when these ballot applications were sent to all of the addresses across the state, just ask yourself how many of them might have been misused. Ballot application comes to an address. It's for a person you don't know, but it's an opportunity to fill it out, send it back, and ultimately a ballot to come and send it back. Or maybe it's coming for your elderly parents who are not able to process it on their own, or it's coming for your child that's away in school or something like that. Do we really think that nobody abused that process? Do we think that no votes occurred that shouldn't have? Again, I don't want to say that this is some sort of grand conspiracy and tens of thousands of votes were stolen or misused, but there were some. I don't know if it was 1 or 10 or 100, but there were some. And that election, coincidentally, there was a state representative election in the town of Southington where I overlapped, decided by 1 vote. Gets one thinking about what's going on. So my amendment, once again, since I've been blabbing and folks may have forgotten, is to prohibit the unsolicited mailing of absentee ballot applications. Still allows anyone to be eligible, still allows anyone to ask. I think we should make it as easy to ask as possible. You can do it by phone, you can do it online, you can stop in the town hall. I don't mind if we make it even easier. I don't care if you come up with a phone application to do it. But the difference is, let the person actually ask for their absentee ballot. Do not send them out en masse. As I believe we've already moved adoption, and I do believe I have a second, and I've asked for a roll call vote. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Question or comment? Will the clerk please call the roll on the amendment?
A motion has been made and seconded for amendment number 7 on HB 5001. Senator Flexer.
No.
Senator Blumenthal.
No.
Senator Honig.
Senator Honig votes no.
Representative Morinbello.
No.
Representative Osborne.
No.
Senator Sampson.
Sampson is yes.
Representative Mastro Francesco.
Yes.
Representative Bronco.
Yes.
Representative Carpino.
Carpino votes yes.
Representative Fonsello.
Yes.
Representative Gauthier.
No.
Representative Haddad.
Representative Haddad votes no.
Representative Hoxha.
Yes.
Representative Johnson.
Representative Johnson votes no.
Representative Menapace.
In the negative.
Representative Rosario. Representative Santiago.
No.
Representative Shannon.
Shannon votes no.
Senator Winfield.
Senator Winfield in the negative.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Is there further question or comment on the bill before us?
Oh, yeah, no, we got a vote tally.
Oh, yes, sir. Sorry.
I'm still on this.
Excuse me. Mr. Clerk, would you please announce the tally on the amendment?
Yes, sir. We have 6 in the yeas, 12 nays, 1 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The amendment fails.
So close.
Sorry about that. A little rusty here. All right. Senator Sampson still has the floor. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That was highly disappointing, even though it was expected and predictable, and sadly so. I got so many political things to say that I know I'm not allowed to say, so I'm going to keep those to myself. However, I think that we very clearly stated the problem with mailing out a mass number of absentee ballot applications as long as our voter rolls are not kept up. And they are not kept up. There's evidence of that reappears regularly. There are businesses that use the voter rolls to do mailings, and they get countless items returned in the mail because the people they're mailing to actually don't live there. And I don't want to cast aspersions on every local government, town clerk, registrar, etc., because I know some places do a very good job. They're actually scanning the obituaries. They're actually monitoring things. When they mail something out and it gets returned in the mail, they follow up. They go through a process. The problem is that there's no real mandatory process on a state level. There is no proper references to compare things with. The Heritage Foundation puts out a scorecard that shows which states are doing what to preserve the integrity of elections. And our score is in the pits. And the reason why it is because almost all the things that other states are actively doing to preserve their election integrity are ignored in the state. And they're ignored for overtly political purposes because they affect populations based on race or geography. And I got to tell you, it doesn't make any sense because people, American citizens who have the right to vote, they really do value that vote. Doesn't matter who they are. And they want to preserve the integrity of elections into the future. And people aren't happy. I will tell you, the people that are most upset about what they're witnessing when they turn on the news and they watch what's happening in Bridgeport, for example, with the number of videos and surveillance footage and the court cases and, redo mayoral elections that the taxpayers have to pay for, etc. You know who's most upset about that? The people who live in Bridgeport. They're more upset about it than I am. That's those people and their votes that are not being accurately counted towards a result. I want to just also point out that the good chairman mentioned that this amendment might have been at cross purposes with the intent because the mass mailing of absentee ballot applications helps clean the voter rolls. I'm happy to say that is no way to clean the voter rolls, okay? That is like trying to get some dirt off the fender of your car by driving it into a bridge. You do not try and fix the voter rolls by sending out a bunch of erroneous ballot applications. That's what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to stop election fraud. I'm trying to stop even the possibility of election fraud, and I'm trying to do it without denying anyone a single thing. Everyone under my proposed amendment would have still maintained their right to vote by absentee without an excuse. I'm even happy to expand that further if necessary. The only difference is that I expect somebody who is going to vote by absentee to ask for their own ballot. There's a provision in this bill, by the way, that is a absolutely scary provision. As close as I was, I might to possibly supporting the underlying proposal. The one thing that was really stood out to me when I got the substitute language is the permanent absentee provision. And we had the Secretary of State in this committee at a public hearing just a few days ago telling us that she is chomping at the bit to have some money from the state government to go out and send a mailing to everyone to tell them, hey, look, guess what? Not only can you vote by absentee, you can also sign up to go on the permanent list. Now, that might work very well for people that want to go on the permanent list who are legitimate voters who want to, but what an open door for crooks. Oh, man. You don't have to just scam to get an absentee ballot application sent to a fictional person or somebody who's not going to get it, that you can intercept it. You don't have to do it every year. You can just do it once. Yeah. And now it's built in, it's baked into the process. Guess what? Them ballot applications are coming every year now. Oh, actually, it's ballots. It's not just ballot applications. That means ballots are actually going out automatically. I hope the press is paying close attention to this. I know that they try and do a good job, and it's hard to digest all of this stuff, just like it's hard for us to digest it. And it's not easy to talk about in a short few-minute conversation because it does get wonky. You start digging around in these bills, and you're like, oh, what's this? Oh, what's that for? Oh, my God, why are they doing that? And that's how I feel. So because I am concerned about the voter rolls legitimately, and I would like them to be cleaned up. By the way, I just want to point out that our voter rolls being a mess is only a problem under the legislation that we have here. Under my proposed view and the amendment that just failed on party lines, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Because in those cases, it's only people who are actually asking who are being checked by the town clerk. And then they're sent their ballot application and ultimately their ballot. But if you open the door to sending them to the voter rolls in the current condition, what a mess. And those voter rolls are constantly ever changing under the best of circumstances. People move. I mean, how many people, when they decide they're going to move, are like, oh yeah, I got to call the town clerk and tell them I moved and I'm no longer registered. They're not going to do that. So the town clerk may be relying on some returned mail a year later. Maybe their ballot is getting returned in the mail because they don't live there anymore and they were in that permanent absentee ballot system. What happens when that ballot goes to the new person that lives in that house? So what I would like to do, Mr. Chairman, is offer another amendment. And this one, everyone should have in front of them. This one is identified as amendment number 4. And this would simply update our current statute that references the Secretary of State being in charge of maintaining our voter rolls, the list of names and addresses of eligible voters in the state who are active registered voters, and changes this to a mandate for that office. It says, very simple, after the last section of the bill, this is an add-on amendment, folks, notwithstanding any provision of the general statutes, the Secretary of State shall annually audit and update the voter rolls. That is all we're doing here. For the people listening, I want you to understand just how simple an amendment this is. I'm not trying to undo anything. I'm not changing the bill. I'm not erasing anything. All I'm attempting to do here is add one sentence into our laws, a requirement that the Secretary of State once a year audit and update our voter rolls. I think if we put that on a ballot, we'd succeed very easily. Let's see what happens when we actually vote on it. It's a very simple question. A yes means yes, you believe the Secretary of State should audit our voter rolls at least annually. And a no vote means, I guess, you're fine with the voter rolls being a mess. I move adoption, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like a roll call vote.
There's a motion from Senator Sampson, a second from Representative Carpino. Is there comment or question on the amendment? Further? Representative Menapes.
Sorry, Senator Sampson, I was just wondering if you had any idea what the fiscal note for this would be.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I do not know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further question or comment on the amendment? I will just say that while I respect and appreciate the spirit in which the amendment is offered, there's two issues as I see it with this amendment. One is that it is vague. It does not specify how the checks should be conducted, and that could leave a lot of interpretation open as to whether the Secretary were sufficiently fulfilling this duty, or were perhaps doing things based on this duty that were not expected or anticipated or desired. And another issue is that we have actually directed previously specific methods by which the Secretary must actually fulfill this mandate. In 2024, we passed a bill that mandated that the Secretary of the State shall at least annually cause a search to be made of the computer voter registration records to identify electors who may be registered in more than one town or registered more than once in the same town. We also provided for additional checks that are similar to these through a cross-reference from input information from a list compiled from the jury administrator, so that it's cross-checked with the jury lists. So I am happy to continue a conversation about how we can continue to have our Secretary of the State's office conduct such maintenance of the voter rolls and keeping them up to date. But at this point, I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment. Further question or comment on the amendment? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll on the amendment?
Motion has been made and seconded for amendment number 4 on HB 5001. Senator Flexer.
No.
Representative Blumenthal.
No.
Senator Honig.
Senator Honig votes no.
Representative Morambello.
No.
Representative Osborne.
No.
Senator Sampson.
Sampson is yes.
Representative Mastro Francesco.
Mastro Francesco votes yes.
Representative Bronco.
Yes.
Representative Carpino.
Carpino votes yes.
Representative Fonsello.
Yes.
Representative Gauthier.
No.
Representative Haddad.
Representative Haddad votes no.
Representative Hoxha.
Hoxha votes yes.
Representative Johnson.
Representative Johnson votes no.
Representative Menapes.
No.
Representative Rosario. Representative Santiago.
No.
Representative Shannon. Senator Winfield.
I'll pass.
Winfield in the negative.
Mr. Clerk, when you're ready, would you please announce the tally on the amendment?
Tally is 6 yeas, 11 nays, 2 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The amendment fails. Senator Sampson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, disappointed but not surprised. And this is kind of how it goes in this committee, which is that there's always a party line vote on an effort by the minority to put some sense back into the policy agenda that the majority has provided to us. It's almost like we've never had a good idea, not even one time. It's amazing, and it's somewhat remarkable, and I have to tell you, unbelievably frustrating. But I hope the people of Connecticut are watching. I think that this year things have changed a little bit. I've sensed it a little bit that there's more folks monitoring what is happening in their state government than ever before, and I think that's a good thing, because I think that it's really easy to vote against the will of the people when very few people are watching. But when they're actually paying attention, it gets a little harder to do. I've got a couple more amendments, and I think they're going to get increasingly more difficult to say no to. So I'll just throw that out there. Following up on the subject of audits and unsolicited or mailed ballot applications and the voter rolls, there is a process that we could engage in right now that might help clean up the voter rolls, which we don't do. Every year I put an amendment or a bill forward, which has not been heard. But that shouldn't be a reason to discount it. It's not the kind of thing that needs a full-blown public hearing for people to understand. It is a very simple and straightforward concept. And I know that my conversations with municipal employees that run elections have been favorable. So I would like to offer, Mr. Chairman, another amendment. This one is identified as Amendment 2 in the package that was provided. And it says, after the last section, add the following and renumber the sections. Notwithstanding any provision of the general statutes, so this is another add-on to the end, doesn't change anything else, it's just, do you think this singular thing is a good idea? The Secretary of State shall conduct audits of absentee ballot applications and absentee ballots after each election to ensure that voters live at the address where such absentee ballot applications was sent and from where such absentee ballot vote was cast. I move adoption, and I'd like a roll call vote.
Second.
And a brief explanation is very simple. So if someone votes by absentee ballot and the mailings, either for the application or the ballot itself, or a registration document is returned to the Secretary of State after that election or in the process of that election, the Secretary of State would now be required to actually audit those to make sure that those folks were actually real people and that they were legitimate voters who cast those ballots. I think it's a very straightforward thing because it seems pretty odd to me that if someone casts a ballot and then ultimately they cannot be found, it makes you wonder whether that ballot was ever actually valid to begin with. So I think this is a very straightforward and simple amendment that we ought to adopt. And I encourage my colleagues in both parties to consider whether or not it's a good idea to try and do the littlest, the smallest effort of creating a process to clean this up. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. The amendment is moved by Senator Sampson, seconded by Representative Mastrofrancesco. Are there any questions or comment on the amendment? Seeing none. I will just urge my colleagues to vote against this amendment. This amendment does not indicate how the audits should be conducted, and as a result, would be vague. There is a provision in this bill to conduct risk-limiting audits with a specified procedure, which has been a bipartisan bill that we've all supported in the past, and I think would go significant ways to continuing to instill confidence in our elections and public trust. So I think that is a good step forward in that regard. I think there are other measures perhaps we could undertake to increase or strengthen those audits, but I think we should discuss those with the Secretary before doing so. And as a result, I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll on the amendment?
Motion has been made and seconded for amendment number 2 on HB 5001. Senator Flexer.
No.
Representative Blumenthal.
No.
Senator Honig.
Senator Honig votes no.
Representative Morbello.
No.
Representative Osborne.
No.
Senator Sampson.
Sampson says yes.
Representative Mastrofrancesco.
Yes.
Representative Bronco.
Yes.
Representative Carpino.
Yes.
Representative Fonsello.
Yes.
Representative Gauthier.
No.
Representative Haddad.
Representative Haddad votes no.
Representative Hoxha.
Yes.
Representative Johnson.
Representative Johnson votes no.
Representative Menapace.
No.
Representative Rosario. Representative Santiago.
No.
Representative Shannon.
Dan, do you have it?
Shannon votes no.
And Senator
Was it your
Winfield.
testimony?
Senator Winfield in the negative.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And when you're ready, would you please announce the tally?
Tally is 6 yeas, 12 nays, 1 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The amendment fails. Senator Sampson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I guess audits are not okay either. How about the concept of signature or voter verification? You know, in previous debates like this on this subject matter, I have suggested that one of the problems we have with absentee or mail-in voting in Connecticut is that other states that use this process actually use a verification process to identify a voter at the time of registration. Back in the day, they used to just simply call it signature verification, although there's a lot of different ways to do it. But their earliest form was simply that when you signed up to register to vote, they would capture your signature. And some states actually captured your signature digitally to kind of get a nice exact version of it. And then when you voted by mail, you would, of course, have to sign that ballot, and that would be processed through a system that would match the signatures to say whether it was a 50% match or a 90% match and so forth. And the way that works in states that used it is what they would do is they would just automatically approve anything better than an 80% match, for example, allotting for the fact that some people's signature may change or decline over time. But then they would allow people that did not meet the 80% as a way to come in person or through some other mechanism cure those votes. It's a very effective system which happens to weed out anyone who's not actually truly the person who was supposed to be submitting that ballot. And I think it's very effective. So I've offered the amendment for signature verification in the past, but I'm not going to do that today because we've been doing a little bit of research and finding out that other states have evolved signature verification into more of an art form that has less to do with signatures and has more to do with a unique identifier that they associate with someone's identification. And I think it's a superior process. So I've drafted an amendment that I will offer in a moment that essentially makes a requirement that the state, the Secretary of State develops a program to implement a signature verification or unique identifier system like other states have to verify the integrity of mail-in ballots. If we're serious about expanding all of this mail-in voting, why aren't we doing something to make sure that we're matching up the integrity that belongs with it so people can trust that it's real? I move adoption of the amendment before me, which is kind of a lot to read, but I'll just summarize it to say that Secretary of State shall develop and implement a process by which electors shall receive a unique identifier for purposes of voting when registering to vote, and town clerks, registrars of voters, moderators, absentee ballot counters, and other election officials serving at polling places or central locations designated for the counting of absentee ballots as applicable shall verify each voter's identity by way of such voter's unique identifier upon the envelope of a returned absentee ballot, etc. We can certainly talk about any of the additional language that is in the amendment, but that's the idea. I move adoption, and I'd like a roll call vote.
So moved.
Amendment is moved by Senator Sampson, seconded by Representative Masfrancesco. Is there further question or comment on the amendment? We'll just say, seeing none, that while I think we are very much willing to work on these sorts of programs as they continue to be developed, we heard from the Secretary that there is no program that she would adopt at this point, and that signature verification is actually a technology that many states are going away from because it actually has been shown to be unreliable in the sense that people's signatures change. There is improper or in precise uptake on what these signatures actually look like, and it's somewhat subjective in terms of what a match is. And for all these reasons, that system has kind of fallen by the wayside. The system that we're putting in place today does have a scannable barcode for every ballot. It does have a unique identification number for every ballot so that these ballots can be tracked exhaustively throughout the system. And so I think as these systems are developed, as we have appropriations and the Secretary's best evidence on practicability, I think we are very interested in continuing to look at and potentially adopt in the future new mechanisms to do this. But as of yet, we do not have any that the Secretary has told us are practicable, and for all those reasons, I urge that the amendment be rejected. Just for the record, this is amendment number 8. Senator Sampson for the second time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity just to clarify. There was an amendment number 1 circulated that I have not called. That was specific to signature verification. This is a related amendment, but this is not signature verification. So the comments regarding signature verification are not important. I just alluded to the development of that process over time, beginning with signature verification and culminating in this unique identifier system, which I think is used in many, many states very effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no further question or comment, Mr. Clerk, please call the vote on the amendment.
Motion has been made and seconded for amendment number 8, HB 5001. Senator Flexer.
No.
Representative Blumenthal. No. Senator Honig.
Senator Honig votes no.
Representative Morambello.
No.
Representative Osborne.
No.
Senator Sampson.
Sampson is yes.
Representative Mastro Francesco.
Yes.
Representative Bronco.
Yes.
Representative Carpino.
Yes.
Representative Fonsello.
Yes.
Representative Gauthier.
No.
Representative Haddad.
Representative Haddad votes no.
Representative Hoxha.
Yes.
Representative Johnson.
Representative Johnson votes no.
Representative Menapace.
No.
Representative Rosario. Representative Santiago.
No.
Representative Shannon.
No.
Senator Winfield.
Senator Winfield in the negative.
The tally is 6-12-1.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, another party line vote. I hope that folks are paying very close attention to the scorecard here about each effort to improve the integrity of our elections and who is voting in which way. And that leads me to something that I think it's been in the news a lot lately. You know, folks talking about the Save America Act, for example, which I know is a much larger policy document than simply just photo identification for voting. But that's what I'm here to talk about, which is that it's, in my mind, inexcusable not to have photo ID for voting, knowing full well that it is very popular with voters across the spectrum, and even among Democrats, it is widely popular. And this is a mechanism that is a no-brainer. You can't get on a plane. You can't cash a check. You can't buy certain medication over the counter at CVS unless you got a driver's license, right? I'm sorry, you can't. Oh, you can't shovel snow in New York. That's right. Yeah, our new mayor of New York required you to have photo ID to take on the job of becoming a snow shoveler. At any rate, the bottom line is photo identification is something that nearly every person does possess. It is a way that our state actually uses to make sure they're talking to the person they're talking to. When they pull someone over from who's driving, what do they ask you for? Your driver's license. Why do they do that? Because they want to know who it is. and it has become the most substantial way of identifying individuals. And I have news for anyone who's listening. Elections are pointless unless you know who's actually voting. If you had a room full of people and you didn't say that, hey, person A can't, you're limited to one vote, person A. This is the problem we have, is that we do not have the proper protocols and protections in place. And this is the most basic of all of them, simply requiring photo identification. Now, I suspect we will hear from the majority, as they have said numerous times in the past when I've offered this amendment, that this is an attempt to suppress the vote, particularly in urban areas. That's all baloney. Nobody believes that. And my amendment not only allows for photo ID in the form of a driver's license, but it also allows for photo ID in the form of a state ID, so you don't need to be a licensed driver. And on top of that, it actually allows for folks to become eligible to have a state ID issued to them for free. And before I'm asked about a fiscal note, I don't think it's much. It's only going to apply to a few people who are not eligible financially to get one on their own. And I think it's money well spent. And when I say that, it means something, actually, because I'm the kind of guy who does not want to spend a lot of taxpayers' money. But this is an area where I think we can do better by making such an expenditure. Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of this very straightforward amendment. I won't read it. I'll just say it requires valid photo identification, which clearly displays such elector's name and residential address. And it does say that the DMV shall waive the fee associated with obtaining, for voting purposes, a motor vehicle license, identity card, or other government-issued form of photo identification without the means to pay for such fee. And it also provides a provision that says the state's public library shall provide a free photocopy of any elector's valid photo ID for purposes of voting by absentee ballot, which such fee shall be reimbursable by the state. So the excuses are out the window. There's no more excuses. Everyone should have a valid photo ID to vote in our elections. That is not a form of voter suppression. What is voter suppression is having the loose rules that we have that imply to many, many voters that their vote doesn't count, so they stay home. That's a form of voter suppression that's actually happening. The number of people that tell me that they're not voting because they don't trust our elections and they don't believe that the results are real, it's staggering. Now, I don't think our elections are that bad. There's certainly some element of fraud, but the number of people that are concerned to the point where they have just thrown their hands up and said, I'm not participating anymore. This committee right now has a chance to help fix that. That is incumbent upon us to do so, to make the situation better, to restore faith in our election process. This is a widely popular proposal. And I'm going to do everything I can to publicize this vote after the fact, to make sure people know how the people on this committee voted about this particular proposal, because they deserve to know. Because the people of Connecticut deserve photo ID for elections. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Amendment number 5 has been moved by Senator Sampson, seconded by Representative Master Francesco. There will be a roll call vote. Further comment on the bill? Okay. Representative Morinville.
May I ask a question to the proponent of the bill? How would somebody who is unable to leave their home fulfill the requirements of photocopying their driver's license? I mean, plenty of people don't have copy machines in their homes, or printers, I guess, either.
Representative, I'm assuming you're asking the proponent of the amendment?
I am asking the proponent of the amendment through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the question. The amendment takes into consideration that folks might not have the means to afford or be able to obtain a photo ID from the motor vehicles. So we are waiving the fee, and we're also allowing for public libraries to provide a free photocopy of the valid photo identification. I'm aware that the question is a little more specific, but in my experience, I know that folks do obtain state-issued photo IDs remotely through the efforts of social workers and other types of individuals who work for the state, who go out on site, meet a person in a nursing home or at their residence, collect the necessary information, and then return to motor vehicles with that information. Through you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative?
May I just follow up? So through you, my question was more in regard not to obtaining your driver's license or a photo ID, but once you have it and you're elderly or you're homebound and you get your absentee ballot application and now you're ready to mail it in, how do you mail in a copy of that, I guess was my question. I understand that libraries will do it for free. That's wonderful if you're able to get out to the library, in which case you may be able to get out to early vote too. So I guess my question was more to how do people unable to get out of the house get a copy of their license to include in their absentee ballot? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Sampson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the question. I don't know that I have a specific answer. I think that in the vast majority of cases, you're going to have a family member who is capable of going out and making that copy of the ID for the individual. Again, there are social workers. I would volunteer to do it for any but one of my constituents. Certainly, if that was a impediment to being able to vote for one of my constituents, I would gladly go out to their home and help them procure a photocopy of their ID. I think that there's so few people connected with that question, and I do believe that every person does count, and we should find a way to manage that situation. But I don't think that very, very specific instance that will affect a very small number of people should stand in the way of passing this legislation, because I do believe we can account for those people very, very easily as well.
Thank you, Senator. Further questions from the representative? Representative Mastrochesco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can tell you from the time that I have been on this committee, we have been trying to push for photo ID, I don't know, since I've been on here, 2019, 5 or 6 years. And we keep hearing excuses of why we can't do it, why it will disenfranchise voters, which is a ridiculous argument. When people say that, it's actually an insult to the people that the people in the community that they're talking about. Because believe it or not, our voters in the state are pretty smart. They know how to get an ID. And when I hear the questions about, well, who's going to pay for it, you got to be kidding me. The state could pay for it. And for the record, just in case the question comes up, what's the fiscal note on this, is that we don't get a fiscal note until something's passed out of committee. That's the process. And maybe our freshmen and the committee don't really know that, but that's the process, and that's what happens. It's like with any other bill. We'll find out what it costs. But you know what? This state wastes so much money on other things. I think we could afford to give people a state ID so they can vote. And in reference to the question about how are they going to get their photo to vote with the library and so forth, listen, we make accommodations for people. It's not a problem. We want everybody to vote. We want but we want it to be a legitimate vote, and we should accommodate those people, no problem. So I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. How many times, Senator, have we put this amendment in? And I'm sure it'll be amended. We'll put it in again on the floor. But it's common sense. 80% of the people in this country agree with some sort of identification to vote. Even the Democrats on the other side of the aisle agree with it. It's just common sense. I'd urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Further question or comment from the committee? I will just say for a couple of reasons that I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment. One is the questions asked by the good vice chair, which I think illustrated some of the obstacles that some people may have to obtaining a photocopy of an of identification to submit with their absentee ballot. One of the things we've been trying to do on this committee is make it more convenient and easier for people to vote. Every time the government sets up roadblocks to people's right to vote and they're not able to vote as a result, it's a great offense to the right. I will say that I think members of this committee agree with Representative Master Francesco's indication that most people agree that there should be some form of identification to vote. And indeed, Connecticut does have identification required to vote. It just doesn't happen to be certain photo identification. And so there have been data assembled by various organizations about how these sorts of provisions would affect individuals' right to vote. Depending on the organization and the study, they indicate that somewhere between 7 and 9% of voters could be disenfranchised by such a measure. And that's maybe because they don't have photo identification at all, but it may be just that their photo identification is out of date. They may have moved, so their address is no longer operative on their current identification. They may look different than their photo. There may be some other indication or reason why they would be disenfranchised by such a measure. And creating such a roadblock to people and disenfranchising people in that way, I think, would be the opposite of what we're trying to do with this bill. And for all those reasons, I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment. Seeing no further question or comment, Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll on this amendment?
Motion has been made and seconded for amendment number 5 for HB 5001. Senator Flexer.
No.
Representative Blumenthal.
No.
Senator Honig.
Senator Honig votes no.
Representative Morambello.
No.
Representative Osborne.
No.
Senator Sampson.
Sampson is yes.
Representative Master Francesco.
Master Francesco votes yes.
Representative Bronco. Yes. Representative Carpino. Yes. Representative Fonsello.
Yes.
Representative Gauthier.
No.
Representative Haddad.
Representative Haddad votes no.
Representative Hoeksa.
Yes.
Representative Johnson.
Representative Johnson votes no.
Representative Menapace.
No.
Representative Rosario. Representative Santiago.
No.
Representative Shannon.
No.
Senator Winfield.
Senator Winfield in the negative.
6-12 to 1, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Again, disappointed, not surprised. A party line vote defeating a amendment request to create a requirement for photo identification being necessary to vote in the state of Connecticut, including provisions to provide that photo ID for free to those who need it. It's very disappointing knowing that the people across this great country and across our state, including people in all political parties, overwhelmingly support it. I appreciate the chairman's comments about disenfranchisement, etc. The whole idea that my colleagues would try and suggest that somehow because myself and other Republicans are supporting a photo ID requirement that we're somehow disenfranchising anyone is so absurd it shocks the senses. And the argument about the random 1 in a million individual who is unable to leave their home to get out to vote, we can accommodate a circumstance like that very easily. I said so. That person would not end up being disenfranchised at the end of the day. Anyone is that in that kind of circumstance, they're receiving some sort of help or treatment. They have family members. There's some other mechanism. I would defy anyone to point that person out to me and say, there's the person right there you're disenfranchising. And guess what? If you pointed them out to me, I would go take care of photocopying their license for them personally. So the idea that somehow we're the folks that are trying to disenfranchise people is absurd. The people that are being disenfranchised are every voter that is a valid voter in the state of Connecticut, because they're being denied the knowledge that their vote fully matters and is not being diluted by fraud. That's who's being disenfranchised. And I got news for my colleagues. The people of Connecticut already understand that. Maybe the information doesn't get to them all the time about what's actually happening here and what's being voted on so that they can make informed decisions. But that's changing. And people are going to become aware more and more about the votes that are taking place here and who stands for what. I'd also correct the chairman when he suggests that we do require photo identification for voting. The law in Connecticut is, well, he said photo identification, and then he said photo identification in some cases. And both those statements are true, except that I want to just add one caveat to that, which is that you can vote in the state of Connecticut without any identification at all. You're required to have identification to vote in Connecticut, but not photo identification to vote in person, which means you can bring an envelope that has that's addressed to you. Allegedly, that's proving that's you, right? It's absurd. And under some circumstances, you do need a copy of your driver's license to actually vote absentee, which is a good thing. It's already in place for some circumstances. I think it's for new absentee voters in some cases. So what I'm doing here is not a stretch. I guess when that passed, that wasn't an inconvenience to the person that was stuck at home. Just when I offer it. But there is a situation when people are same-day registration voters. Somebody in Connecticut can walk up to the polls on Election Day, and as long as they were in line at 8 o'clock, it could be 9 p.m. at night in New Haven, and they can say, no, I got no ID, I got no nothing, I want to vote. And guess what? They can vote in Connecticut. They simply have to sign an affidavit that suggests that they're John Smith. And I just moved to New Haven yesterday. That's why I'm not on the voter rolls. Sorry, Mr. Town Clerk, Mr. Register. It's a terrible policy. I didn't support it when it occurred to begin with. Anyone who wants to be part of our election process, I think they know it's out there, and they can take some personal responsibility to become a part of that election process by registering. We make it so easy. Same-day registration is just a mechanism to muck up the process and create potential for problems. And I wasn't going to offer this amendment, but since the good chairman brought up the fact that you need ID to vote, and I know that's not true in the case of same-day voters, same-day registration voters, I have an amendment. This one, much like the other one, would audit those people. Because the process right now is John Smith shows up in New Haven and says, I want to vote, but Mr. Smith, you're not on the voter rolls. Well, yeah, I just moved to town, but can you please let me vote? Okay, sign this affidavit. We'll put your ballot through the machine. And then at some point in the future, after that vote has been counted, the election's done, the person who was elected is in office, at some point in the future, that town will register that voter. They'll actually put them through the process, and they will create them and put them on the voter rolls. And then when they do, they'll send a confirmation letter to that person. Now, guess what happens next? Either that letter is gone forever and it never comes back. John Smith was probably a real guy. Thank heavens. But sometimes those get returned back to the town. And it makes you wonder, well, who the heck was that John Smith character or came in to vote at the last minute on that day? You know that I have been trying to get a bill passed in this committee for years to audit those returned envelopes for same-day voter registrations. And you know what? Never gets heard, never gets a vote. But it's a situation. In Connecticut, you can vote without any identification at all, photo or otherwise, and we don't even bother to audit the process if those registrations are returned later. We should change that. We should change that. And we have an opportunity right now. It's a simple vote. Again, notwithstanding anything in the other bill, not changing anything, just adding a single sentence. Is it a good idea that we should be doing this? Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of State shall conduct audits of same-day registration ballots after each election. And no, it doesn't specify the mechanism for how it's done. That all can be filled in later. The good chairman knows that. That is an excuse. And if there was a desire to amend this to state the requirements, I'm open to it. We can amend my amendment right here and right now. It's a very simple question. Should we be auditing people that same day register and their envelope for their registration forms comes back in the mail? Yeah, we should. Anyone with common sense knows that. Watch how people vote. I move adoption, and I like a roll call vote.
So moved.
Amendment 6 is moved by Senator Sampson, seconded by Representative Master Francesco. Was this 3?
It's Amendment 3.
Amendment 3. Excuse me, correction. Amendment 3, moved by Senator Sampson, seconded by Representative Master Francesco. Further question or comment from the committee? Okay. Seeing no question or comment, I will urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment. We're happy to continue a conversation on whether and how this could be enacted, but as it stands, it doesn't designate how it would be, and we don't know whether from the Secretary it is practicable, and as a result, I've urged my colleagues to vote no. I would also note that part of the provisions of what we're enacting here would specify that certain individuals who are doing same-day registration would need to have, if they don't have identification, they would need to have someone else swear under oath that they are who they say they are and that they're a resident of the district. And so, with all that being said, I would urge my colleagues to reject this amendment. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll on the amendment?
Motion has been made and seconded for amendment number 3 for HB 5001. Senator Flexer. No. Representative Blumenthal. No. Senator Honig.
Senator Honig votes no.
Representative Morambello.
No.
Representative Osborne.
No.
Senator Sampson.
Sampson is yes.
Representative Messer Francesco.
Yes.
Representative Bronco.
Yes.
Representative Carpino.
Yes.
Representative Fonsello.
Yes.
Representative Gauthier.
No.
Representative Haddad.
Representative Haddad votes no.
Representative Hoxha.
Yes.
Representative Johnson.
Representative Johnson votes no.
Representative Menapace.
In the negative.
Representative Rosario. Representative Santiago.
No.
Representative Shannon.
No.
Senator Winfield.
Senator Winfield, in the negative.
6-12 to 1, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, disappointed. Another very simple provision that we could have added to our omnibus bill. I mean, it was never about how, oh, gee, the bill's too long, we can't add anything to it. I was adding a sentence to this 83-page monstrosity. But no, can't do that. Too much of a good thing, I guess. So I'm going to offer one more amendment, Mr. Chairman. And this one has to do with the provision that I noticed appears on the bottom line, line 723, on page 23 of the bill, which sets up a mechanism by which the Secretary of the State shall develop and conduct a statewide public awareness mailing, beginning as soon as practicable after the effective date of this section, to educate the public regarding changes to the absentee voting process and the availability of permanent absentee ballot status.
That's insane.
I wonder what the fiscal note is for that. Anyway, they're going to spend a lot of taxpayer money to send out mail to everybody in the state going, hey, by the way, we know you know how to vote, but you have this new thing. You can sign up for permanent absentee voting. And I have no objection to an awareness campaign. In fact, if I had my way, I would do this bill with the First Amendment I offered intact, that would have eliminated any of the mailings at all, and just put out a very, very significant public awareness campaign so that people would know that they have the ability to request an absentee ballot. To me, that's a far more cost-effective solution for the people of Connecticut. The taxpayers don't have to buy a stamp for every single person, including the people that are have moved or don't exist at all. It's just a public awareness campaign that tells people what their opportunities are to vote. To me, that makes much more sense. And it doesn't create an opportunity for the Secretary of State to promote herself because she is, in fact, a elected official. And again, this is a policy that would outlast this current Secretary of State, so I'm not casting aspersions specifically to our current Secretary of State, but any Secretary of State in the future would also have the ability to go ahead and use this language to put out a lot of mail about the voting opportunities that exist with their, smiling face and their name and title on it, and probably would coincide with the election, I would imagine. So I have some concerns about that, and that might have something to do with some things that have happened in the past. But either way, this is a very good policy proposal that I've got ready. This is amendment number 6. I don't think it's the 6th one we've done, but this one is entitled amendment number 6. And this amendment would say that the Secretary of State shall not use the name, image, or likeness of any candidate for public office or any elected public official, including the Secretary, in any public awareness campaign developed and conducted by the Secretary of the State for purposes of educating the public in matters relating to elections or voting during the 90-day period immediately prior to a primary election. Basically, this is a very straightforward amendment that would prohibit the mailing that is the part of the public awareness campaign from including the likeness of people that are very likely to also be candidates as well as the current office holders. I move adoption, Mr. Chairman, and I would like a roll call vote. Sorry.
The amendment is moved by Senator Sampson, seconded by Representative Mastrofrancesco. Yes. There will be a roll call vote. This is Amendment 6. Is there further comment or question on the amendment? Representative Mastrofrancesco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is really a common sense amendment. I was thinking, when you're during an election time, the Secretary of State sending out maybe a campaign awareness of what, I guess that's what you're calling it. No elected official's name or face should be in that advertisement. That makes sense. To me, that's a conflict of interest. I believe I saw, I think it was in this bill, that when you're sending out an application for an absentee ballot, you're not allowed to put campaign materials in there. This would actually, this makes sense. It actually goes with that. The Secretary of State, as much respect that I have for her, when you're in the middle of a campaign, you shouldn't be putting mailers out or promotions, promoting yourself. I think we saw this on a national level. Somebody spent a lot of money and they no longer have a job. I think people know what I'm talking about. I agree with that. Money shouldn't be spent, and it shouldn't be spent here in Connecticut, regardless of what party you are. It makes a lot of sense. So I would urge my colleagues to do the right thing and vote for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further comment or question from the committee? Seeing none, I think I agree in principle with some of this amendment, or at least the thrust of it, which is that we shouldn't have publicly paid for mailings displaying a candidate for an election going out in proximity to the election. And I think we could actually work something out in this vein. I don't think this language does it, but I think I can commit, and I think the co-chairs can commit to continuing to discuss this. I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment today, but I do think the spirit of it is already in the bill with regard to the provision that Representative Mastrofrancesco identified, and I think that we can probably find some sort of measure in the future that may prevent the proximity of having we can prevent having publicly paid for mailings with a candidate on them being sent out in proximity to the election. With that, I urge my colleagues to reject the amendment. And Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll on the amendment?
Motion has been made and seconded for amendment number 6, HB 5001. Senator Flexer.
No.
Representative Blumenthal.
No.
Senator Honig.
Senator Honig votes no.
Representative Morambello.
No.
Representative Osborne.
No.
Senator Sampson.
Sampson is yes.
Representative Mastro Francesco.
Yes.
Representative Bronco.
Yes.
Representative Carpino.
Yes.
Representative Fonsello.
Yes.
Representative Gauthier.
No.
Representative Haddad.
Representative Haddad votes no.
Representative Hoxha.
Yes.
Representative Johnson.
Representative Johnson votes no.
Representative Menapace.
No.
Representative Rosario. Representative Santiago.
No.
Representative Shannon.
No.
Senator Winfield.
Senator Winfield, in a negative.
Tallies 6-12-1, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad we were able to finish with the amendments. I'm very disappointed that I don't know how many there were, 7 or 8 total, that every one of them came down on a party line. As I mentioned a couple of times throughout, it's expected, but it's so disappointing. You know, I know that the chairs are sincere when they indicate that they appreciate the thrust of an amendment or something like that, but at the end of the day, they're not happening. You know, it's been years, and we don't have photo ID. We don't have a voter verification process. There's other amendments that I've offered in the past, and we'll certainly see if this bill continues on to the floor, and it no doubt will. We'll talk about increasing penalties for people that commit voter fraud. We'll talk about different ways that our voter file ought to be verified for its integrity. We're gonna talk about all of that because we need to. What needs to happen beyond me offering these amendments, however, is a real discussion about the policy and how it's going to affect Connecticut, and hopefully some bipartisanship in the way we agree to handle our election laws, which, as I mentioned earlier, are the rules of the game that we are choosing our elected officials by. There is no reason for these votes to be partisan votes. There really isn't. We can disagree on a lot of things, but when we're disagreeing about the rules that decide our elections, it should be concerning to people across the state. I don't really have a lot more to add to our conversation. I'll say for the record that I did my absolute level best to understand this 83-page, 56-section monstrosity between the time that I got it at 10 a.m. and then had to come speak about it in front of you folks only a couple of hours afterwards, along with the other 51 bills on our agenda. But I don't know every letter of it. I can only imagine the things that I did not find in the process, since anyone who's ever looked at legislation will realize that it is not so apparent when we're constantly referring back to different statutes, and maybe a simple comma or a bracket here or there can make a world of difference, just like a change from a may to a shall or vice versa. But what I do know is that this bill represents the desire of the majority to expand their voting practices that have benefited them electorally in the past, with little regard to the actual quality policy that you would put in place if you wanted to ensure accurate and honest elections. And that's the battle and the choice that people are going to have to weigh in coming elections, is who's standing for policies that benefit them electorally, and who's standing for policy that benefits the people they represent. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll just simply state that I will not vote for this today, but I will hope that you and your co-chairman take the time to sit down with myself and my colleagues and address some of the concerns that you have indicated that you have a basic agreement with, so that we can incorporate them in this policy ultimately when it becomes law in the state of Connecticut for the betterment of the people that live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Further question or comment from the committee on the bill? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll on HB 5001?
Motion has been made and seconded to JFS to the floor HB 5001 with LCO 3490. Senator Flexer.
Yes.
Representative Blumenthal.
Yes.
Senator Honig.
Senator Honig votes yes.
Representative Morin-Bello.
Yes.
Representative Osborne.
Yes.
Senator Sampson.
Sampson is no.
Representative Mastro Francesco.
Master Francesco votes no.
Representative Bronco. Representative Carpino. Representative Fonsello.
No.
Representative Gauthier.
Yes.
Representative Haddad.
Haddad votes yes.
Representative Hoxha.
Hoxha votes no.
Representative Johnson.
Representative Johnson votes yes.
Representative Menapace.
Yes.
Representative Rosario. Representative Santiago.
Yes.
Representative Shannon.
Yes.
Senator Winfield.
Winfield in the affirmative.
Tally is 12-6-1, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and the votes will remain open, as I've said previously, until at least the end of the meeting or a time that we